Welcome to another episode of Mommy Mondays. This is Jem Pinto. Joining me is my beautiful, beautiful host, Denisha Vargas. We are back. We are back, and we are back bigger than ever. We got some amazing, amazing guests this season, and our first guest is somebody who is truly, truly special to me. She has been a part of my life for the past 13 years. And she is someone who I have grown extremely, extremely close to. I consider her my sister, a friend, my confidant, my partner, and someone that I always feel very comfortable to be myself and be my authentic self and express myself in every which way, good, bad, and ugly, and not be judged. And those are great, great people to have in your life because you need those people to get through just the roller coaster of what life is. So without further ado, I would like to introduce my guest, Miss Diane, who is a mother of three. And what's beautiful is not only a mother of three, but I just am fascinated by the ages of how she had her children. We have at 20, she had her first one, right?
21.
21. Second one was 30.
About that, yeah.
30, and then the third one was 40. So obviously she has a lot of experience, not only in children and as they develop and as they grow into adulthood, and then also coming from being a mom to daughters and also being a mom to a son. And having her experience right now, she's going to be joining us today. We're going to be talking about single parenting. I have an extreme respect for mothers or fathers who do this by themselves, because this shit is no joke. And if you're able to have a partner to do it with, that is great. But not everyone, cars line in that way sometimes. And I'm always curious to learn and grow from other women, and I think that we can learn a lot from mothers who are doing this by themselves. And sometimes I'm sure there's other mothers out there who maybe are in a relationship that is not serving them in the way they thought that a family would serve them. So they have to sometimes make a really hard decision. So let's just get to it. I'm gonna have you introduce yourself and just tell us about yourself, where you come from, and kind of your journey in motherhood.
Hi, and thank you for that beautiful introduction. I feel the same way about you. I love you to death. I'm so proud of you. And it's nice to meet you, Denisha.
Thank you. So nice to meet you too.
So I want to start by saying, right, I always have an issue with single parenting, that word, right? Because I always used to say to myself, is it a double parent? Is it a triple parent? Single is a status. Am I divorced? So I always saw myself as a divorced mother, right? And you say, what's the difference? So I decided to look it up because I had my own perspective of it, right? So single parenting, when I looked it up, it said one parent alone practicing and taking responsibility of nurturing children in the absence of another parent, right? Mm-hmm. So I always saw myself as a sole parent, sole provider, right? Mm-hmm. And that's almost the same, but it says a person residing in the household with their children without the presence of the other parent, right? So a presence, you cannot be physically present, but you can be always available. Right. So it just depends. And then my biggest issue, because I never really saw this, maybe one or two couples, I'm going to say two couples that I know offhand, right? Co-parenting, right? And that's sharing equal responsibility. Okay. So sharing equal responsibility when you are a divorced mother. When you live with the kids, right? It's a whole different ballgame. You wake up with them, mornings can start off stressful, right? Usually they do. Well, we're going to call it stressful, but there's a lot of activity going on, right? So I want to touch base on that eventually or near. But for myself, I grew up in the Bronx. For the first 20 years of my life, I grew up in the Bronx and Yonkers. I had a very, let's call it rough, neglectful, abusive life, right? But I always had hope. Like I had a plan and I didn't realize I had a plan. So early on, I was blessed to get a job at an Ivy League school, and I landed there, and they provided housing for me. So my first child I had, the issue is, right, and I want you guys to interrupt me with questions because sometimes I'm guilty of like going off on tangents, right? So my first child I had, I didn't know what I didn't know, right? And that's probably the most dangerous place to be, right? Because you have no clue that you have no clue, right?
Yeah.
Parenting is, it takes a lot. You have to provide physically, financially, but really most importantly is nurturing, right? So if you've never had that experience yourself, how can you give it if you don't know what it is to receive it?
Yeah.
So I never really wanted to be a parent because I didn't think that I would be a good parent.
Wow. Same.
So when I got pregnant with my first daughter, I was about to be 21, right? And unfortunately, since I didn't know what I didn't know, and this is not to bash the father, right? We both came from unhealthy, toxic families, right? So I was severely battered and abused and neglected. And I stayed in that relationship for 15 years, right? And I left that relationship for good when I had my first daughter was 12 and my second child was 1 year old, right? But I thought that I was ready for that. And I thought, oh, I'm going to be, rid of this person, right? I'm going to be rid of this person and I'm going to live my best life. But again, I didn't know what I didn't know. We didn't know about healing. There was no wokeness, right? So
Right.
that had its different challenges. However, because I had 2 full-time jobs, right? And for the first time I could provide financially, I thought that was enough. But we all know that's not enough, right?
Yeah, that's most of us that I think that you touched on. What year was that in?
When I finally broke up with my husband,
You like when you yes, you started working for yourself.
it was July 5th, 2005.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So I was already working 2 full-time jobs and I was earning enough income, right? I'm going to call it hood rich, right? I was hood rich and no one was able to control what I can do with my money. But I
Right.
didn't even understand what finances was. I thought that because I was able to provide, right? We were good. The kids, I'm also blessed to say this, and it's not always a blessing, right? It's not always a blessing. It's how we perceive our belief system. So my kids went to private school. So I was like, oh, this is wonderful. They go to private school, right? We live in an outstanding neighborhood, right? And we have enough money. But I'm going to go off a little bit. One of my both daughters' complaints is this, right? Sometimes I'm getting a little emotional here, is that I never hugged them or kissed them. And I never realized that, right? And then the other thing was, this is not funny. Sometimes we're going to laugh at this, right? The other thing was that my daughter said, you never took us to the park. Daddy always took us to the park. So I said, yeah, because that motherfucker broke, right? But that was not the thing to say, right? But I was going off of, I was being defensive, right? So to me, listen, I never grew up. We never had food in the fridge. We never had proper clothes. Nobody ever cared about how we looked, what we had. So I was trying to fill that void because that's the only void I knew how to fill. Another thing is, we're going to go back to this now that I forgot to mention. I grew up without a father in the house. So a loving father, a caring father, he wasn't around anyway, but sometimes you have a parent in the house, but they're not providing the things that you need anyway. So I didn't have that. So I didn't have an example of what a healthy relationship looked like, of what good parenting skills look like. And this is not to throw shade on my parents. They didn't have that either. But now I start at 2021 having this baby and I don't have a clue, right? I'm broke. And then I go into a very toxic relationship. Wow. Now I have 2 children, a 1-year-old and a 13-year-old, and I'm single for 4.5 years. I'm living it up. That's what I'm thinking, right? I meet someone and boom, I have another baby. So again, I still didn't know what I didn't know. So I was just winging it. But I don't know about you ladies, but most of us, you just figure it out and you keep going. You just figure it out and you keep going. That's not really how it's supposed to be, right? So I didn't know how to heal. I didn't know how to love myself. So what was I showing my children? And not to even, I have to give myself grace. I did the best that I knew how. And I did some great things for my children. But, there was a lot of lack there, right? And they witnessed things and they saw things that they should have not. So now we're going into a cycle of toxicity. And there's consequences for everything, right? All the choices that we make, there's consequences.
Yeah.
So did I give you a little bit of background there?
Yeah, that was real. That was real. And I appreciate it. I appreciate your vulnerability. I appreciate your transparency because it's not something that all of us really talk about. We kind of just hide in our own shadows and in our lives and to the world we just keep quote unquote pushing through. But there's some tough battles in between those stages, and one thing that I want to tell you is that the fact that you're able to acknowledge and be in full awareness of what has transpired says a lot about your healing, because that's the only time we're able to change, is when we become aware of something. And I'll give just a corny example, but like, for example, we had just got this new car, right? I see this damn car everywhere I turn, like a cult, right? I never noticed the car before, right?
Oh, no.
Only because now I have it, I see it everywhere. So that's the thing about when you become aware of something, you start seeing everything for what it, like you really start seeing things for what it was. So you were able to realize that there was so much you didn't know. And the truth is that we can't blame anybody because everything is learned behavior.
Right.
We go into these parenting things with learned behavior. Like my biggest challenge is being, like I say, like a conscious parent, like me and, Greg are consciously parenting. That is not easy because when you do those toxic things that you learned growing up, you feel hella guilty.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Yes.
there's guilt, there's shame.
Yeah. You're like, yo, what's wrong? Why did I do that? Like after you step out of that black, like black moment, I call it, black out real quick, right? And then you're just like, yo, what the fuck was that about? And it comes from, the truth is that this generation of us right now are doing the most healing than anybody ever did prior to us, as far as in the recent generations, because our parents, there's some parents that still won't even acknowledge anything because they'll think you're trying to bash them. And it's conversations you can't even have with them because they'll be like, what you mean? I was I had a roof over your head. I gave you food. And you're like, no, that's great.
But they didn't ask to be here. And that's what we're supposed to do. Right.
So you're, on a higher level, and the fact that you're able to be like, you know what? I realized that I thought that was it. And there was more to that. But like you said, how can you give something you never received?
And how do you explain that to children that they're never really going to understand, right? And so
later.
So I reached the stage of apologizing, right? But where I'm constantly reminding, and this hurts, it's going to hurt me right now to say it. My kids say, yeah, but you always go back to doing the same thing. So that's going back to default, right? And I work on it, you don't understand. And they don't realize how much I work on it, because before I explode again, instead of giving 10 chances, I give them maybe 25, right? So inside I'm already dying, but they're not so forgiving because they're like, oh, there she goes again. She's just going to do it again,
Well, do you think also maybe that comes from like, how like they say like for example, I know I have this issue big with my mom, in the sense like, if I ever get upset at something, right, that she does, she talks to me like I'm the 5-year-old little angry girl that had quote unquote no reason to be upset. Because in her mind, she doesn't know I grew up, You know what I mean? She doesn't know that I'm
Mhm.
short. She doesn't know I went through experiences. So the truth is that your daughters are never truly gonna know what you
Never.
truly go through, you know? And
Mhm.
that's all of us, you know, like only you know that battle and that fight, right? And only you know the changes you have made, the things that you're aware of now, the things that you're working on, right? So
Every day.
so it's like it's gonna be hard for them to receive that because they're still in a state of pain. So until they
Mhm.
find their true healing journey, that's when they'll be more receptive to what you're giving.
You know what?
Correct.
Also, I feel like as parents, we we're held up on a pedestal for a really large amount of years. Maybe it's not until the teenage years where we're not up on that pedestal anymore and we start going down in their perception of us.
Hmm.
And I connected a lot with what you said, Diane, because my mom didn't hug me or tell me that she loved me. And I'm just here to tell you that as the daughter of someone that was like that, I love my mom and I call her every single day.
Mhm.
She would beat my ass and I'll be like writing her love letters. Like for a moment, I was like, what is wrong with me? Like, why do I love this lady so much? And it was like a give and take battle. But the second I became a parent, I understood everything that she did. So like I say that to say that like children, you just gotta sometimes you gotta be the enemy.
Yeah. Most
And
of the
you
time.
gotta yeah, like you it's just it has to be that way because there are certain
Mhm.
concepts and cycles that they will never understand until they have their own children or until they
Mhm.
catch themselves in a very, very scary situation where they might have lost everything.
Mhm.
You know, so I say that also to like any parent out there, like it's never too late to gain consciousness of your actions, of the cycles in your life, and realize like, oh wait, it doesn't have to be like this. So just you knowing and being aware of your behaviors, whether they repeat right now or not, there's gonna be a moment where you're gonna get stronger and those moments won't repeat anymore. And
Mhm.
that's when they'll start realizing again, like, oh wow, because my mom, she, like I said, there was a lot of lack of love, but it's because she was so busy trying to provide, and you
Yes.
honestly
Yes.
you cannot be both.
Listen, I work 2 full-time jobs, right? I work 7 days a week, and 3 or 4 of those days, up until the other day, were 16-hour shifts.
Oh
So, you know, I had to make a choice, right? It was be broke and be home, right? And figure out how we were gonna, which I never lived that life before ever, ever, until about 5 years ago, or have money and go out and work. So this time I handled it differently. I had an explanation. I explained to them why this needed to happen and how I was going to make it okay for us, you know?
my God.
I'm sorry that I interrupted you, Denisha.
No, no, that was amazing. That's exactly what I was like, my point that I feel like as a parent now more than ever, I realize that I will never be the perfect parent because there's no such thing.
Mhm.
And that
No.
each child has their own journey, meaning that they're going to have a different perception of what my parenting looked like to them. And there's
Mhm.
always going to be things that they're like, oh, I didn't like this, or I love that you did that.
Mhm.
But it's always hard no matter which path you go on.
Mhm.
Like you said, going out to work and leaving your kids at home is hard, but also staying at home and not having all the freedoms to do what you want is also hard.
Yeah, it really sucks. I tried it for about 3 years and I loved, right? Staying home with the kids during that pandemic time. I loved it, loved it. I love being a mother like that. But, you know, now where's the money?
Yeah, you got to make these
So
really.
something's got to give sometimes, and why, right? Why does it have to, or, you know, not even why, because we could sit here until we're blue in the face about why. What can I do? How can I make it better, right? I say explanation, and that can also segue into dating, but I don't know if we're going to have time for that. It's something that you mentioned.
Oh yeah,
But
we're gonna talk about that. But I did want to just say really quickly, you know, one thing that was really just deep to me, that in one of my therapy sessions that she said to me, and it was when I was just asking her, something about the children, and I was like, this guilt that comes, when you fuck up and shit like that. And one thing she said was, you have to understand that the repair is extremely powerful. So yeah, you can do what you do, but that repair that you continuously keep doing is something that is like, basically, like, that is something that when they get to that point, like where Denisha hit, where it was like, oh, wait a minute, you know what I mean? I see things from a different perspective now.
Mhm.
Those repair moments are going to hit harder because they're going to realize that you were literally trying to repair, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Not just, just whatever, like, and one thing that I also want to tell you is the reason I love and respect, that, growth that you have, stepped into of that, is because my mom has not been the greatest parent. Unfortunately, she has not been in a conscious state for a long time. And she has made some really, really detrimental, mistakes in our lives. However, one thing that I always say is, like, with everything you've done, one thing I would have loved for you to do is just say, I apologize for everything I've done to you, and I was wrong.
Apology is very important, and also receiving what they have to say and not saying anything,
Not saying
right?
anything.
Not saying anything. You have to receive what they say. Because let me tell you, especially the middle one, the one that's about to be 19 years old, she's not vicious. She's brutally honest, right?
Mhm,
And she has told me things, and I'm just like, oh. My oldest daughter, she's a little bit more reserved.
mhm.
And so I think she feels more badly. So I think that her being honest with me, she feels more like, oh, I'm gonna make her feel bad. So I don't want to make her feel bad.
Gotcha.
And then the third one, he just doesn't care. He just says what's on his mind, and he's not even aware, right? But it's a good thing, right? Because he lets me know certain things. Like one time he told me, Mom, things just sometimes they just don't work out,
Oh,
right? And when he said that to me, I said, is that what they told you over there? No, Mom, it's just, like, so, he just comes out and says, it's not that big of a deal, Mom. Like, what's the big deal? And some, we're not used to that type of back talk, right? We couldn't do that.
right.
So this new gentle parenting, I'll tell you one thing, I don't think it really works that well, right? Because, you really do, you're their friend, they're not your friend, okay? But they don't know it.
Yeah.
So you have to set that boundary, right? You can't let them cross the lines. You have to be consistent. You have to be disciplined, and you have to be willing to be the bad guy. And that's another thing that I've been struggling with. But I think especially these past 2 weeks, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to have to learn how to accept, right? That first of all, I have to honor myself, right? And accept that some days I'm going to wake up high and motivated, and I'm going to be ready to conquer the world, right? And some days I'm not going to be, right? But all days I have to give myself grace, because every day I wake up and, I give it everything I have most of the time, right?
Mm,
And I'm doing it solely, right? Because we're not going to even get to touch about finance, right? Because I have a reputation of, everything is about money, right? But money is very, very important. And, my ex-husband, the girl's father, a long time ago, he told me, oh, so if I give you $1,000 a month in child support, that make you a better mom? I said, hell fucking yeah, it make me a real much better mom, right? So people will take it in a different way, right? But if you're receiving $1,000 and you know that in this day and age, what can we do with $1,000? We're supposed to be grateful for everything, right? We're supposed to be grateful. And I get that. But if a woman is getting $1,000 a month, and this was quite a while ago, you're not going to have to be worried all the time, right? So
mhm.
you'll be more easy, because it is very hard. And I went through that way for years. I used to cry almost every day in this recent time. where if you're going to sleep worrying about money, if you're waking up worried about money, right? How can you really parent the way you want to parent? Because you're always like reacting or responding from a place of fear or despair. And despair is feeling hopeless. And when you feel hopeless, right, you behave anger and what's called bitter, right? Or she's the bitter woman. She's the bitter ex, right? But really that comes from you have so much sadness, right? But sadness, right? We're supposed to talk about society. People equate that to being weak, right? So nobody wants to seem weak, but they're really sad and they're in pain. So they behave bitter and angry. They have an attitude, right? But it's really despair because, and I don't even want to say lonely, but when you feel hopeless and you feel aloneness, right? Because many of my friends, let's call them friends and even family members, and they probably were coming from a great place, right? Oh, leave them, raise those kids by yourself. It's better to be, by yourself. And I get that, but they all stayed, right? But when you need somebody to really talk to, right? They judge you most of the time. Yeah. So now you stay quiet, right? Because they say, oh, reach out, reach out, reach out. Sometimes that's bullshit, okay?
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to hear a sad story. Somebody told me, oh, why don't you seek counseling? Why don't you do talk therapy? Let me tell you something also about talk therapy, okay? Most of the time, and I've been doing therapy almost since high school. Most of the time, talk therapy does not work. And I'm not saying all of the time, right? I have a high school education and I only have life skills, right? Mm-hmm. However, we mostly operate from the subconscious mind. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
So we need to go deep into that in order to repair, right? And to heal. Because people used to tell me, oh, you got to lean into it. I don't know what the fuck that, you sad, you broke, you hurt, you feel betrayed, right? What I'm leaning into pain. You don't understand that, right? And when you owe so much bills and you've never been in that situation, right? How do you behave? You feel nervous. Like I said, you're in fear. So, and now you're supposed to show your children, right? That we're going to make it. I'm strong, right? Because you don't want to show them that because then they're like, oh, she broke down and look at what happened, right? But thankfully, there was a silver lining. And I did finally, reach a point where, okay, let me do self-care. And what was self-care to me? I mean, what is self-care to you ladies? I want to ask you that.
I feel it's really everything, honestly. I feel like everything and anything that fucking makes you feel good. So like, for example, something as simple as going to a drive-through and sitting down, eating my food, watching a Netflix phone is fucking self-care because I'm at my peace of mind and I feel so good. I feel so good. I'm just chilling. I'm chilling. And that if that makes me feel good, it's fucking self-care.
Yeah. Agreed. Self-care to me is the same. Anything that I can feel. I like spending time alone. I never realized about myself. It's something new that I'm finding out because I find myself like overstimulated a lot and like,
Ladies, hold on 1 second, okay? You can keep talking. Just give me 90 seconds. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, and I believe myself now that I've found peace in spending a little bit of time alone because I also Jen, we stay at home with our babies, so we're not. If you at least you get to tag team with your husband because you guys both work from home. But my husband goes out to work, so being with them all day, I love them and it's amazing, but I realize that it overstimulates me.
Yeah, because that's how I get when he has to work out or like he's out all day working, though I'll be losing it.
Yeah. And
sorry about that. Sorry.
It's okay. And so yeah, that and also like I really like having conversations with other people because I get a lot of thoughts in my head. And obviously, a lot of these thoughts are adult thoughts, like, things about the world or history or anything like consciousness or new styles of parenting. And when I can get a conversation going to kind of stimulate what the thoughts that I have in my mind, that is self-care for me.
Mhm.
Yes.
Self-care for me was when I finally got an apartment that was suitable for us, meaning the size and all that. I got my own bathroom, right? So I wouldn't feel guilty about buying something, a shower curtain, and spend $50, right? Because if the kids ask me for something that costs 2.5 million, we're gonna find this money. We're gonna do this. But if something costs $2.50 for myself, I had to justify it. I had to feel guilty, right? So since I always had people live with me, right? We always had one bathroom. You take a shower real fast. Everybody uses your stuff. Nobody respects your things, right? They use it now. And then your children are still relative, very young, right? I have adults, right? So once they became preteens, they start using your shit that you're like, damn, I paid $50 for this bottle of lotion and I want to. So for me, now I made my bathroom into a spa. So anybody that comes, they're like, oh, wow, this is my bathroom. Watch out. I buy all myself lotions, potions, everything for my face. And I have a ritual in that bathroom. And that happens almost every single day. But when I walk out the door, I feel, it's going to sound so weird, but I feel amazing, right? And sometimes, or all the time for me, the little things are the big things, right? So those little things, you start with that because, some of us, we don't have the time or the money to go to a spa, right? Make that shit in your own house.
Yeah.
If you can, right? If you can. So I started, doing things like that to make myself feel better. And just being able to go to the store and buying, not what I want, but yeah, for the most part, better than I was off. Now I allow myself that. Don't feel worse. What are you feeling guilty for? You raise two grown kids. One is on home, the other one is off to college, right? And you have your little boy here. And he's easy for the most part. Well, he's growing into his, he's smelling himself now. No, it's getting a little bit, like a little bit out of hand, right? So his dad is his best friend, right? He could do no wrong, everything is wonderful. Papi will just do it for me. Oh, Papi will just do it for me. But, so sometimes there's things that I want to say too. And it's just you get tired of that shit, right? So I did something today that I've never done before. And I'm so fucking proud of myself, okay? A friend of mine has suggested something. I was like, I can't do that. So today we were supposed to do something and he gave me such a hard time, but it was something that it was over disrespect, right? So I said, I could either smash his face in, which I don't want to do that. I don't hit the children, right? I want to, but I don't do that, right? Or I didn't say anything. I just texted his father and said, hey, pick up your son. He has baseball this day. He has dance this day. He has the Met Gala. I'm going to give you the schedule. Keep him for a week, right? So my son comes out maybe 2 or 3 hours later. And he's like, I'm going with Papi. I said, you are, right? So he said, oh, you didn't tell me. I said, oh, I didn't? Me hice la boba, right? But you know what? Now I'm going to give myself that freedom that it took me all these years, right? Of being single parent to be like, not that he doesn't go with his father, because of course he goes with his father, right? But this was different. This was on my terms. This was, you know what? I'm gonna give myself a peaceful week.
I'm tired of
I don't
you.
have to, because
Tired of your PS.
yeah, because by the time we get outside in the morning every day, like I wanna throw my hands because he challenges everything every day, all the time. And I love him with every bit of me, right? But raising a boy is different than raising a girl.
It is so different.
It is so completely different.
Like what are the differences in that?
So first of all, they love you with everything for a really, really long time, right? But I am not a man. He grew up with sisters, a grandmother, and a mom, right? For now it's been more than half of his life. So, we're kind of soft with him, right? We baby him too much. And that's going to hurt him, right? I defend him and he has to learn to defend himself. He has to learn to advocate for himself. So I have to, let him go with his father. And I see that he's a totally different child with his father. Totally different, right?
Yeah.
So I can't really baby him anymore. And it's way too late, right? But that's a big difference. Another thing is that I heard this one time and it really stuck with me and I'm still unsure about it. It said, a mother shouldn't be smacking up a son. This is what it was said on this particular podcast, right? They shouldn't have that relationship. The relationship like that, not that a father should be abusive, but the father should be the strong one laying down that law.
The discipline.
Not so much the mother, right? Because if your father got you in check, most of the time, you're not going to go that route and you're going to touch that ground right here and there. But when you have the support and you have the morals and values and you're congruent with the other parent, let's just say, things are different. But when it's lopsided, right, it's unbalanced, you're always, again, the bad guy. And I want to be the fun parent sometimes, right? A long time ago, I was like, on a scale from 1 to 10, fun, where am I? He said, Mom, you're a 10, right? Now, and I thought that was the greatest thing he could have ever said, right? My cooking was a 7, 8. I could live with that, right? But fun was 10. I'm not fun anymore, but I can't be fun because we have school, we have tests, we have he has chores. He has to take out the garbage, right? I'm always the disciplinarian. So I'm not the fun parent no more. So you can go on weekends or every day and you can go, oh, it's all fun over here. You come back. There's no homework done. And again, there's no shade. It's just what it is. There's no bedtime. I don't even know what it is, but it's not like here. Here, I'm watching him because I'm raising a man, right?
Yeah.
And it's a different ball game. He has to be respectful to women. He has sisters. He has a mother. He has grandmother. I'm sorry.
No,
Taking
it's
up all the time here.
I'm really glad that, like, because I'm gonna give you a little perspective from my end. Like, you sending him over to his dad, I feel like was the best thing you can do, because after a certain age, boys need to be around other men. They just need. And like you said, like, at least for me, I didn't grow up with my father being very present. So like you said, we don't have that example. And for women, I feel like their mom is an example of like their dad is an example of how a man should treat you. So you tend to pick your partner in a very similar way that you would view your father in, right?
Extremely. It's what it is. It's how it is.
And so I feel like the boys, especially with the teenage years, Enzo also has it's 3 girls in the house all day. He's with his sisters and with me. Now he has his other sister here too. So now it's 4 girls. And when he can spend time with his father, for him, that's everything. Like you said, I'm not the fun parent, but I am the nurturing parent. So whenever he does have troubles, he comes to me.
Right.
To let it out, to release the emotion that he couldn't release with his father. Because I'm also trying to teach him to release the emotions in a different way so that he's not crying over every little thing, but he's also not suppressing his emotions,
Right.
So to me, the boys being with their father is so important. And like you said, I believe that the female lays down the law and the man protects it or makes it happen. And I think that duality is very important. So like if you have certain rules and the part, at least the baby's father can always say, oh, you have to listen to your mom. You talk to your son's father to let you and your dad, you and the dad are on the same page. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know what you mean. And that's the thing too, when I'm not saying we're not on the same page, right? I'm just saying that's the case, right? It becomes difficult. So, I released him completely. Like, like I said, he goes and spends plenty of time. It's not that he doesn't, but I was like, bye.
Yeah, and it's gonna benefit him. That's what my point is, that he's gonna benefit from him, and you're gonna benefit because you're getting your break.
Yeah, freedom, and then you can do, because I don't want to do blended families anymore. I'm not interested. Okay, I'm not interested in that. Okay, I'm not interested in introducing or meeting. I don't need to do that, right? But if I have the freedom to do, what I want, because I work very hard, right? And I dedicate my life to my children, right? But then there's also that people always saying, oh, you have to make time for yourself because your kids are gonna go and they're gonna leave you and this and that. Listen, I did that 2 times. How'd that work out for me? It didn't, right? Okay. It didn't. So now I'm gonna live my life on my terms as much as I can, right? And now the pro, because there's not everything is a negative, right? There's always something good. I could do what the fuck well, you know what I'm trying to say by then. I have to, run a household, right? Running a household is like running a business, right? That's how I feel. I have to run a household. However, I don't want to mix those things anymore, right? Now, something could happen, a miracle, that somebody's worthy of that, no problem. But in the meanwhile, I don't want to mix that. I want to, for once, really honor myself and my feelings. Now, like I said, somebody could come and be like, oh, he's the best person in the whole wide world and he's worthy of this. I have a standard of excellence now, right? I'm not in the settling mode anymore. And I don't want to do that. So if I allow myself the time free of guilt, right? And now, now I'm earning a lot more money than where I was. So I feel better, right? Now I'm releasing the children somewhat. And now I have to make time for myself. Mini vacations, things like that. And so, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And I was gonna ask you, what does that look like? Like, serving yourself right now as opposed to saying, you know what, I'm gonna try to find somebody, because it can get lonely. I'm pretty sure, and in those moments of vulnerability, like, do you have those where you feel lonely and then you're like, you know what, let me do something for myself to to not stay in that mentality of feeling like I need somebody.
So there was a period of time that I was so deeply depressed and sad, right? Same thing. And I just knew that I wasn't ready. And people were trying to push me and push me and push me. But for once, I listened to myself. Why? Because, I had a high school sweetheart, 5 to 20, 15 to 20, right? Mm-hmm. I met my husband, that was, really it was 5 to 19. I met my husband 20, I was with him 20 to 35, right? Then from 38, 39 until 47, 48, it was another. So I did that already. So now it's my time now, right? So people are like, oh, she's miserable, she's bitter, she's this. I listen to a lot of coworkers and their relationships, and God bless them. You don't wish anything on anybody's relationship, right? But I know that that's not what I want, right? So now I'm at the stage where I know what I want, right? And I know what my non-negotiables are. And I'm going to honor that as well. Because, we can get to know a person in 15, 20 minutes by listening and by asking the right questions, right? So I already know I don't want to deal with that. I'm not going to deal with that. That's not what I want, right? So, I'm very open, right? And I do things, like I said, on my terms, but my children don't have to be involved and they don't have to know nothing of that. Because, it's a double-edged sword, right? If you do you, it's a problem. If you don't do you, it's a problem. I think that what's important right now is that I rebuild myself, find the career that I really love, because now I could do whatever I want. You know what I mean? Not that, I have options now, right? So I can do that. I can still take care of my children, right? And I could make out time for me. But, is it always easy? No. Do I wake up every day? There have been times that I woke up and I was I felt so alone. And it was more the support. When you don't have a support person, right? Sometimes you just want to be, be vulnerable and be like, oh my God, this is somebody to talk to, but that really loves you, right? Yeah. That really cares about you. So that's hard. But I had to learn to be alone and really be alone. And that's the best thing that ever happened to me in my life.
That's amazing.
I listen, I always tell people the best thing, because you find out so much about yourself when you're by yourself. For me, at least, I feel like
you learn yourself.
You really do, you learn, your habitual habits, these different things, were there any any specific things that you feel that has allowed you to get to this point in your journey, like any books, any practices you did within yourself, just anything exterior, or was it more of just you um speaking to yourself and finding the strength like that?
I, you know, that's a off the top, rock bottom. I hit such rock bottom, right? I had no self-respect. I had no dignity. I allowed myself to be dragged, right? To be humiliated. And I saw this. My kids saw this, okay? My kids saw me feeling humiliated, right? Totally broke. I lost everything. I threw away my career of 30 years, the house that I lived in forever, right? And they saw that. And one day I woke up and I said, wait a fucking second, right? I can't go any more lower than this, right? Because there's another thing that I'm going to say that, it's taboo, right? But I'm going to say it. I would never choose suicide ever, but I didn't want to live anymore, right?
Mm.
And when I got to that place, right, I said, oh, fuck this shit, okay? My kids are watching and and what did you say earlier about the repair, right? So, I mean, how lower could have I gone? And I said, this is what you're going to do for yourself. No, 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 no. You have to pick yourself up. And how I did that was, I'll say this real quick. One day I woke up, I got dressed and I said, if I could make $100 today, that's not a lot of money, right? So it's doable. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I'm going to make $100 today, right? I prayed on it. I went outside. I made $100 that day, right? And I said, if I can do this every day, that's $3,000 a month, right? Off the books. I could do something with $3,000 a month, right? But it made me wake up, get dressed, right? My kids saw me leave the house, right? I had to put on a show every single day until now I've more than doubled that, So it took me to hit rock bottom to realize if you don't fucking do something, what are your kids going to say? Is this how you want your kids to remember how you were? And I snapped out of it, but I don't know. I think I went off on a tangent on that one too.
No, that was good. I feel like a lot of moms are gonna be able, because honestly, I now that I reflect, I can look back and see the times that my mom was in despair. I can
Mm-hmm.
go back and see that, there was a lot of things that she hid from us. Like there was times where I didn't know. She would get so mad if we got our clothes dirty and I didn't get it. And it was because we couldn't afford clothes. If we got holes in it or
Mm-hmm.
stained it, that was it. We lost that outfit. And so all these moments, like one thing that I will never forget that my mom will always teach me is that she always did what she had to do.
Mm-hmm.
It always got done. I don't know how, but she always found the energy to do it. And that's such a great lesson to have in front of your children, like especially when they see you do it alone.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that will be with them forever. But I do
Mm-hmm.
also feel like those might be cycles that they don't repeat because you are, like you said, deciding not to enter into another relationship until you've met with yourself 100%.
Mm-hmm.
And so
That's
they're going to see that. They're going to witness that. They're going to be able to get some sort of example off of that. And that was great.
Because I'm not building this build a bear, that shit finished. I'm not building somebody. I'm not helping. I'm not doing that. Okay. You have to come whole, right?
that's
I'm
right.
not saying you have to be rich, right? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you have to be whole, right? I have to be whole. And together, we can do something, but I'm not helping you. I ain't doing that. No, 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 no. I'm not doing any of those things, right? When you meet somebody and you feel like I said they're worthy of it, you do good things for each other. You do nice things for each other, but building somebody, helping we ain't doing that.
Right.
That's not what I'm doing. And that also comes off like bitter. No, it's not that it's bitter. Like my friend told me, a very good friend of mine, she said, hi, you're so close for love. No, 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 no. I'm not close for love. I'm close for what I was accepting before that
Right.
was not love and that I was accepting as love, but it wasn't.
Well, that's the thing is that a lot of us are not honest with ourselves. You know what I mean? That's like I said, there's other people probably in relationships right now with their significant with their child's father, and they probably don't even want to be there. But it's like, oh, I have to stay for the children. And for me personally, I always felt that that was the wrong thing to do, because I remember looking at my parents who couldn't stand each other. They were fighting. All I saw growing up in my prime years was two adults who would go at it all the time, had no respect for how they spoke to each other. They were just going at it every time. And I would look at them like, I don't want to see this, So when they separated, it was kind of a relief for me, because I felt like I don't have to witness this no more, this toxicity, right? And the thing that afterwards as a child, what I think a lot of sometimes parents that are in like the thick of, not knowing what to do. One thing as a child, I'll say, is that I felt a relief after that. Now, the only thing that was the challenge was, and I'm sure they both went through their own challenges, my parents within themselves, of what they were going through and their own trauma and their own, unconsciousness in what they needed to heal from. Because then my mom didn't know how to be my mom, even though she was physically there for my first like 15 years of my life, she mentally wasn't there, like checked out, So after that, when I, went to just live with, it was just me and my dad after I was 15, I don't feel she knew how to even parent. Like, she didn't know how to parent with me there with her. And then afterwards, she just kind of like just threw in the towel, Like,
now that was her. I'm not talking about her specifically. I have all the respect for her. That's Noah's girl for life, right? But she did throw in the towel because she was like, she relieved herself of that responsibility, or you relieved her from that responsibility. And a lot of times, sometimes we just want to give up, right? Because you don't know what we're going through. And then that's a problem too, right? Sometimes we're just not equipped. We don't have the mental capacity.
My mom has the mental capacity or equipped, and I don't know if it was in the last podcast episode, maybe somebody I was speaking to. I think it was somebody I was speaking to. But what we were saying is sometimes a lot of parents that have done a lot of damage, just because they grew up in a very toxic environment, you know what I mean? And they were completely unconscious in their parenting. I don't think they can come to terms with what they have done. Because coming to terms with what they have done, they'll probably commit suicide. And I'm not trying to sound like
they have to face themselves.
They have to face themselves. And that is something I'm busy. Sorry, y'all. They have to face themselves. And that is something that not every parent or every person is able to do, is face themselves and face their ugliest moments, of what they have, experienced or what they have done. And I've accepted that in the sense where I still love her. I have no hate for her. I honestly feel bad for her, because I feel like she hasn't woken up to that, so that's why we're not able to have a certain type of relationship, because I have to set certain boundaries, because I have to protect myself.
You have to protect yourself.
I have to protect myself emotionally to be a parent to my children, and I know how much certain things that she does affects me. So I have to be picky and choosy on when I answer that call. And if I answer that call, what state is this person mentally in? And if they're in a very high emotional state, I can't have those conversations.
Yeah, you have to have you have triggers, and you get to choose, and it's okay. It's okay.
Hey, and just like you, what you're doing now, it's choosing to find the path of least resistance. It's choosing to find the path of peace, right? And saying, you know what? And a lot of people don't like to accept, because a lot of people put titles like mother, daughter, all these things where it's like, well, they can do whatever they want to somebody and we have to just accept it. And I do not believe that. I believe that everybody reserves the right to set whatever boundaries they have to set for their own mental well-being, for their own, like all that, because we don't know to the level of what these other people, you know what I mean? Whether it be a daughter, whether it be a parent, of how much they're affecting that other person. So we can never say, oh, just because, like, there's people I remember that I have heard, like, just family members and different, like, oh, well, that's still your mother. And it's like, oh, I get all that.
That's not okay though.
But I'm also still her daughter. So where's my protection? Where's the, oh wait, that's still your daughter. You don't do that to your daughter. I've never heard that. I've never heard that. I've always heard, but that's still your mother. And it's like, I get it. Now I'm not mad at her. I'm not gonna shit on her. I'm not gonna do any of that. You know, I'm aware that this person is consciously has created a whole different reality in order to survive in this world right now. She had to create a new reality so that she can't face herself. And I've accepted that and I'm okay with that. And that's what comes with healing. Now I just know where my triggers are at, like you said, and I know how to be like, oh, well, gotta protect this one. This gotta, you know, I know what I feel now. We sometimes don't want to feel, right? Like you said, when you were going through your rock bottom and you were going through what you were going through, right? And you felt in despair and you felt hopeless and all these things, those are hard terms to come to terms with, you know? You sit there and say, you know what? I'm going to feel this till I feel it. And you felt it to your core. And that's when we get to the rock bottom. That's when we get to that rock bottom, when we start to really feel. And then it's like, once that thing is felt to its core, you get to this point where, like you said, you wake up and you're like, enough is enough.
And it's not why.
It's not what,
because it's not going to matter why. It's what. What is this telling me? What do I do next? And since I didn't know, I was like, okay, I know how to work. But I want to say these two things, and then, you know, I'm sure it's probably over, but before I forget, so I apologize, right? So 2 messages. So as my son, because, you know, you didn't want to touch on son, as my son sees me working and throwing out the garbage and doing all of these things and hustling, and he's a sweet kid, he is, right? You know, he's just feeling himself. I have conversations with him. And I say to him, I know that you see me doing this, but this is really not how it should be, right? It's really not how it's supposed to be. The reason why I say that to him is because that's going to be normal for him, right? Because it was normal for me. I thought that I was supposed to cook, clean, wash, work, pay the bills. And then they want to pay half. If they want to contribute, that's okay. That's never okay, right? So I have those conversations with him and hoping to break those cycles. And then with my oldest daughter, right, she was very upset with me. I don't know if she was upset with me, right? I should say, she always said, oh, you have this negative thing about having kids and having kids and having kids. But I was always trying to be honest with her, right? So my message to young adults, let's just say you don't have children, right? Or you're in the early stages. What the message that I say is, number one, is when you meet somebody, when you have children or you choose to have children, you're having children with their parents, their parents, parents, their parents, parents. So you have to really look at that family, right? Because it's culture, it's environment, right? It's finance, right? What are their beliefs? What are their values? How do they see money? How do they see education? You know, how do they see conflict, right? Because that's what you're going to create this other person with them, right? And now that's forever. So I try to say, look at it not with love, okay? Look at it for the truth. Try that. And always work on being self-sufficient and financially stable for yourself. Meaning, if I'm, ladies, let's just call it what it is. I think that the single motherhood is, compared to dads, I think it's 80%, right? And divorce is more than 60%, right? In New York, I believe, right? Now, I say, make sure or strive to have enough money, right? So that, God forbid, if something happens, you can still live the same standard of life, right? Because you're going to you're going to go through heartache, right? You're going to be, you know, sad. You're going to be lonely, right? It's better to be that with some fucking money, right? Because when you like that and you ain't got no money, now you have no fucking options, okay? So she says, oh, Ma, here you go. But that is my message. And I was trying to steer away from that. That still is my message. Make sure you're taking care of yourself first. You can afford the things, right? Don't live above your means, right? Make sure you always have a savings. Be disciplined with your finances. That's easier said than done, right? But at the end of the day, if you go into a relationship with somebody and they fucked up, you fucked up, and you ain't got no money, what's that? What's going to happen there? We know what's going to happen there. So I want you to lean towards the healthy. So I try to talk to them real, but they're like, oh, and I understand why they see it that way, but That's my message.
I get it. And you know what? You're not wrong, because the thing is, you know what it is with people when it comes to money, and this is why a lot of people, if they make it seem like, oh, well, you're just obsessed with money, or you just worried about money. And it's like you said, it's gonna add more stress. The truth is, if when you have to deal with the money situation, because the regular life situation of just going through the emotional roller coaster of those kind of things is extremely, extremely draining and stressful. So when you add financial stress, it adds to it. But that also comes with the fact that have been raised in a scarcity mindset, and we have
Yes.
been raised without any literacy.
You're
So
right.
most of us have dealt with that, us in our generation that grew up, we've dealt with that financial struggle. And that is something that you then afterwards, as you grow up, you're like, listen, you could deal with everything else, right? Have this thing here that we're not meant to suffer, to struggle, to work hard. These are stuff that we've had to do because of the conditions and the environment and the brainwash and things that we were brought into. Some of it, obviously, through systemic racism and different things like that. So we're always battling those two struggles. So I get what you mean when you're telling your children, like, listen, have this in order, because it's not only about breakup. Somebody could pass away. Something could happen.
Thank you. Thank you.
So many different variables where life is unpredictable. We have a ticket here. We don't know when our ticket is to go, but we all gonna go at some point, right? And what if that, something like that transpires while you have a family with somebody? You have to always, and that's not thinking negative, that's just the realities of life. Anything can happen, right? Things don't work out, whatever the case is, you just want to always make sure that you are taking care of yourself financially, because that is a extra like rock that the picture that nobody wants to deal with, But
financial security is important.
It's extremely important. It's extremely important, and that comes even really quickly before we close out with marriage. If you guys go stuff and then you guys are also broke, that shit takes you to a whole nother level of struggle, and emotional and things that you go through. So they all play a part, we're all in this experience. You're gonna need finances to move around this reality, right? Now, the great thing is that when we get to our spaces of healing, right, that you have been doing, that we all have been doing, right, when you get to meeting your soul and finding yourself, right, and getting basically like back into your body, you know what happens after that? That everything that you have in like an escrow of all those beautiful desires, all those beautiful dreams, all of a sudden, you know what happens? There's so much of a window for them to come in now, for you
It's true. It's so true. Because I'm getting so many different opportunities now, right? Because I have a different mindset, or I'm working towards that. So I see things differently. And
and that's what's beautiful, is that you enter this state where then it is supposed to be easier. And I want everybody to know that if it is, that's not to say that overnight you can get to that place, but don't ever think that you're meant to be in that struggle. Don't ever think you're meant to stay in that pain. Don't ever think you're meant to stay in that despair, of that hopelessness. You're not meant to, but that moment that you're in that little cocoon where you're going through all these things, when you come out of that cocoon, there is so much opportunity, so many things that God, the universe, whatever people want to call it, that you will be able to receive because you are ready to receive it. When we don't get something, is because we're not ready. We may think we are, because what is it? The hopelessness and the fear and the despair, you want it so bad, right? But that desperation is where then you don't trust.
We're blocking it, right? We're blocking it.
You're blocking it. You're still in fear. So I just want to commend you for being able to get to this point, because not a lot of people get to this point. And the fact that you're still here, the fact that you're still breathing, I think everybody is grateful for that. I know exactly what it is to be in a state where you don't want to be here no more. And that is a very, very hard place to be, especially when you have children. And to come out of that says so about
to thrive.
Yes.
because you're not, you're not on survivor mode anymore. And that's why you can set all these boundaries, you're
Right.
not in survivor mode anymore, and now you can get all your shit together. Like that's how it is. Like we don't have our shit together because we're still struggling to get the basic necessities for survival. Like Jen was mentioning with money, and how we should be thinking of it more as a tool
Right.
rather than like, oh,
Yes.
you can't be spiritual and be rich. Like, yes, you
Yes,
can.
you can.
You
Yes,
can.
you can. You can actually be more spiritual if you're
Yeah.
not broke.
But you can give more. When you
You
have
can
more, you
help
can give
people,
more. You have to make
exactly.
sure you do that. You have to make sure you give if you're receiving,
Yeah.
right?
And real quick, I also wanted to mention that we have to remember, like, first of all, parenting is the quickest path to consciousness. Let's set the line
Mm-hmm.
clear on that. And that's why a lot of us parents, we go through struggles, because we become aware a lot faster than other people do. And we brought in the spectrum, which I think is so important. So, like, that suffering that we go through, that loneliness, or those moments where we're like, what is happening? Because at least I can say for me and Jen, it's like when you're not in good terms with your partner, it's like your whole world caves. So imagine your whole world caving every day because you don't have that support. Like, you're definitely broadening up a spectrum that, as above so below. If you don't go through that suffering, you can't be this great. So
That's
the fact
true.
that you were able to go through all of that and be where you at today, it kudos, like, it's amazing, and I'm just in awe.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone who joined us. Thank you, Diane, for tapping in with us. We'll be back next week, and we'll just keep going with this. This is just a safe space for us to have these difficult conversations, to be vulnerable and not be judged, and be real about what the fuck this parenting shit is, because it's
Mm-hmm.
not, just all the beautiful pictures. They are beautiful, but there's a lot that goes into this. And I think if we're all more honest with ourselves, honest
Mm.
with each other as women, then that's when we start to heal this village. That's when we start to come together more, because not everybody's being honest. Like, oh, you felt like that too, so have I. Now I'm
Mm-hmm.
crazy. But that's it. We're about to close it out. Thank you again for joining
Good
us
night, ladies. Blessings. Okay, blessings to both of you and your families.
Thank you.
every Monday, Mommy Mondays. We'll see you next week. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Good night.